Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. May have heard the saying that like cold water to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. And that's what we hope to share with you today is some good news about some work that we've been doing with the Region 9 Comprehensive Center, with our partners at the National Center for Safe Supported Learning Environments and West 40. So we have an exciting session for you today to talk about supporting students in effective transitions. And we're looking forward to hearing from directly from students. Students are the ones who are going through these transitions, and we thought it was important to hear from them. We have a great panel of expert panelists from Nestle, from West 40, and also from Region 9. They're going to answer some questions. They're going to spend some time in discussion and also be able to take a Q&A session at the end. So we're excited to get started. So our next slide is reading our recording notice. And so the American Institutes for Research allows for the recording of audio, visuals, participants, and other information sent, verbalized, or utilized during business-related meetings. By joining a meeting, you automatically consent to such recordings. Any participant who prefers to participate via audio only should disable their video camera so only their audio will be captured. Video and or audio recordings of any AIR session shall not be transmitted to an external third party without the permission of AIR. I also want to remind you that closed captions are available for today's webinar, and you can turn them on using the caption setting at the bottom control panel. And if you have any questions, please reach out in the chat and someone from our tech support team will help you out with that. Next slide, please. And so what we're here to talk about today is work that the Region 9 Comprehensive Center Advisory Board started about a year and a half ago. And we were looking at problems of practice and issues that had not been addressed extensively in our region, which serves Illinois and Iowa, or maybe even further across the nation. And our advisory board came together and talked about one thing that they were feeling was an issue that could really help with not only K-12 education, but also in preparing students to enter the workforce, was that many times students are struggling with transitions from one school to the next. And specifically, we kind of honed in on looking at students returning from non-traditional settings, such as alternative schools, back into more traditional school setting. And through the process, we engaged with experts in this area. We talked to students, we talked to staff, and through focus groups and other interviews. And we're able to develop a list of recommendations and a literature review that we posted on our website, and it's available. And we thought that there was so much more to say. We really wanted to be able to share this resource and also share the voice of students with all of you. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. And our next slide provides a little more larger view of those four recommendations. And these are really going to be the heart of what we talk about today in our panel discussion. First one is providing one significant student or one significant adult for each student, improving communication with and for students, reevaluating punitive disciplinary measures in schools, and ultimately creating positive learning environments where teachers can teach, students can learn, and education is really at the forefront. And so it is my pleasure on the next slide to introduce our facilitator or moderator for today, and she'll introduce a panelist. And so I'm just so excited to introduce Greta Columbi today. She's a principal technical assistant consultant at AIR, and she's the director of the National Center for Safe Supported Learning Environments. And Greta, I'm going to pass it over to you to take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aaron. And I'm really looking forward to our panel of experts today. We're so grateful to have some of our greatest experts here, students who are living and breathing this topic every day. We also have other experts who have worked with students in schools and via districts, supporting students in effective transitions. So as we get started, let's do some quick introductions of our students. Alec and Alicia, can you please share your first name, your grade, and your plans for next year? And let's start with Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Garcia. I'm in 11th grade, and my plans for next year are just to finish off the year strong and maybe transition back into my homeschool.
Great, thank you so much, Alex. And Alec.
Hi, my name is Alec Martinez. I'm also in 11th grade with Alex. And next year, I'm really looking forward to just kind of finishing high school and honestly getting into the trades and turning 18 and being able to qualify for different higher up positions that kind of have an age requirement.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Alicia.
Hi, my name is Alicia. Alicia Haraka. I'm in 12th grade, and pretty much next year I'll be graduated from high school and I'll be in college and looking for a part-time job.
Excellent, thank you so much, Alicia. And along with Alex, Alec, and Alicia, as I mentioned a moment ago, we are joined with 3 other experts. We have Sophia Arredondo, who is a TA consultant and liaison for Nestle, National Center on Safe Supportive Learning Environments. We also have Lindsay Jensen, who works at the Illinois Education Association and was the 2018 Illinois Teacher of the Year. And then we have Nancy Molman, who is a school social worker at West 40, the school where our students come from. So more details about Sophia, Lindsay, and Nancy, please click on the link in the chat to view a file with their complete bios. And without further ado, I think we are ready to go with our discussion. So today we have a few questions to talk through, and as you'll notice, they are aligned with the recommendations that Erin just shared. And for each question, we're going to start with hearing from our students, and then we will turn to our other experts. So let's dive into our first discussion with our first discussion question. And if you remember, the first recommendation from the infographic spoke to providing one significant adult for each student. So let's talk about what it looks like for each student to have a significant adult in the school. And how about we start with Alex?
I would say this looks like just students knowing like they have a teacher or a social worker, just some staff member in the building that they trust, makes them feel comfortable. And the benefits of having that significant adult in the building compared to not is like there's days where you might not feel motivated, or there's days where you're just in a different space, and because that teacher knows you, they're able to help you maybe get out that space or help you kind of break that like feeling of that non-motivation. Just they're there to push you and they're able to push you in a different way than other teachers who you might not have that relationship with. So it's just like a comfortability thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Alex. And how about Alec?
For me, I feel like having a significant adult in school, it looks like, for example, my social worker, Miss Conley, she very much has helped me through, the thickest and the thinnest of, school life. So like when I was having, some problems with my mom, she, had sat me down and said, you look good. You look basically bothered, because I just sit there and you can like read how I physically am usually. And so, without talking to her, she just said, what's bothering you, kiddo? And I, told her, I was like, I had a rough morning and weekend with my mom. I'm not really feeling class because I'm not super motivated, because I'm coming from kind of that unmotivating environment. From just fighting with my mom. And so I just told her straight up, hey, like I just need to talk some things out, because my head's not going to be clear enough to retain information, really understand class and make it a productive day. So within that, I found that it was very significant, because I was able to step away and talk rather than just sit in my head and think and contemplate and essentially just build up my overthinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having that ear of somebody to listen, to be able to help you process. Thank you, Alec. And Alicia.
I mean, I think it depends for each student because everyone goes through their own things and they have their own personal experience. But for me specifically, I feel like it's just having not even just like a significant adult, but like with that adult that creates that significant safe space for you. And it doesn't always even have to be about school and everything, because people will come to school, but they have things going on at home, or it's just like those things that aren't necessarily education related that will bother you. And it's just great to have that one adult in the building that you could talk to that still helps you get the education you need, but also is able to help you like with the things going at home, so you're able to do the things that you need to do, essentially.
Great. Thank you so much, Alicia. So we hear this somebody who can motivate you and push you. We heard from Alex, and it sounds like all of you are talking about just being able to process and think through before this helps you get into a space where you can focus on school. Thank you so much for sharing. So we have our other experts too. I'd like to start with Nancy. From your perspective, what does it look like for each student to have a significant adult in the school?
I think from my perspective, having that one significant adult can be like the difference between sometimes making bad choices versus making good choices. You have that adult that you can go to and you can sound off on to help you, to help you walk through the right choices. You're more apt to make the right choice versus the wrong. I mean, I see it even as a mom, for my own kids in school. And I think having that one adult, if you know you have one person that claims you, I'm sure I can find a bunch of research to say that your attendance is going to be better, your academics are going to be better, your willingness to try is going to be better, because you know that you have somebody, at least one person there that believes in you and is they're on your side.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And Lindsay.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me today. I'm really reflecting on everything the students said, and what an incredible group of young people to be contributing to this discussion. I think that being a significant adult in a student's life means that you're someone who will advocate for them, even when it doesn't make you the most popular person in the building. I think that significant adults in young people's lives are people who advocate for them, who notice when something is wrong, even when students can't always articulate what it is that's wrong, because that's also very common. Sometimes kids are going through things and they don't have the vocabulary or the self-awareness to articulate what's really bothering them and preventing them from being successful. So like Alicia said, creating that safe space where students can feel vulnerable and can share and really kind of reflect and get to the root of what is it that's preventing me or from being successful or making me unmotivated. I think that ultimately a significant adult is somebody who doesn't give up on students and who is willing to challenge the status quo and to reimagine what education can look like for every kid, because it is not, this monolithic approach. It should be, we're making safe spaces for all kids to be successful.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And Sophia.
Hi, it's wonderful to be here, and also just listening to Lindsay. I understand why you are Teacher of the Year. Fantastic. And I think I would just echo some of what's already been said, but someone that really prioritizes building those trusting relationships with students, listening, knowing what students' needs are beyond the classroom. Alex shared about his mom kind of maybe having an impact on how he shows up at school, and so I would hope that would signal for that significant adult that maybe there are things at home where there could be more support needed, and so thinking about that whole student and not just their time there in the classroom, but who they are outside of the classroom, and also asking students like we are here today, so important to listen to students. What are those qualities that they're saying that this significant adult has? What are the actions that they're taking? Can we replicate that so that it's not just one adult, but they can name, you know, a dozen adults that are doing the same things for them. So we're building that across the entire school community. Is it also about representation, more representation from educators that actually live and work and play in their neighborhoods, in their communities, or, you know, the teacher that promotes student voice or choice in the classroom, someone who's like inviting students to co-construct those learning spaces where students feel like they can thrive.
Great. Thank you so much to our other group of panelists for really building off of what we heard from the students and sharing from your perspective, especially as staff in a building, and how that has been. Let's move to our next question. And that is, this is based on the second recommendation and the resource that Erin had shared before, and it talks about improving communication with and for students. So how about we start with Alicia? What does good communication with students look like?
Personally, for me, I think it's the uncensorship of things, because a lot of people like to, I guess when they're discussing like touchy matters like this, they tend to like tiptoe around stuff, or they'll say things that try to make it like that fit in a neat little box, but sometimes that's not what students need. Sometimes they just need that realness and to be able to share their feelings without feeling judged, or like they have to say it a certain way, or it has to be a certain way. Just being able to like be honest with one another.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And that's a really good, because I think adults sometimes do that without even meaning to, right? And so thank you so much for raising that, a really important point. Alec, how about for you?
I feel like good communication with students looks like, I very much have seen this, like when a student has kind of like acted up a little bit, maybe crossed a boundary of a teacher and they've sent them out. I feel like good communication is the fact that the teacher doesn't send them out and like just discipline, like, and just kick them out and just be like, you know, I'm not going to even waste my time and like, you know, disregard them. I feel like the best is when I see the teacher like say, you know, you have to leave my classroom because you're doing something. Like they inform them of like why they are leaving. Like it's never just a strict, I've decided upon my own opinion that you should leave my class. Like it's a very rule, you know, basis. Like you've crossed a boundary, you've crossed a rule. I can't let that happen. You know, please remove yourself. I feel like that's excellent communication when I see it happen, because I feel like students in then turn, like they don't disrupt the rest of the class. Everyone else stays focused still. You know, nobody gets a rise out of knowing what happened to, you know, so-and-so from this teacher. Like it's a correction rather than like a circus and like a show.
Thank you so much, Alex. And those challenges do come up, and being able to be clear and move on, that's super important to know and to be thinking about. Okay, so let's turn to our other experts. Lindsay, how about from your perspective?
Sure. So my career actually began in an alternative school setting, and something that I recognized with a lot of my students, and I'm just going to be frank because I feel like we're in the trust tree in the nest, is that they came to us and had a lot of adults who had failed them, quite frankly, along the way, and a lot of distrust, and in my opinion, for good reason. And so when I was trying to cultivate, I think trust is essential for good communication with students. But that really required some repairing and some building. So, you know, my communication with students had to be free of judgment, free of unfair assumptions. And it really required active listening so that I could be truly, authentically empathetic and compassionate. I also think too, it's important to reassure kids that, you know, you're here for them and that you're going to be in their corner, and to make them believe that. And finally, I think it's really important to keep your promises with kids and to be honest, and not to break promises with kids, because then of course that breaks down trust. And when you mess up as an educator, own it. Kids need to see us apologize when we mess up. They deserve the same respect that we it is, I never came into an environment feeling like respect is just earned. Some of our students have had really traumatizing experiences in school, and it's our job to remedy that. And so we have to be mindful when we're trying to build that trust, which leads to good communication with our students.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And Nancy.
I feel like everything that needed to be said was said. The panelists did a great job, but I think for me, one of the biggest things that I try to make sure my kids know is like, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also listening to what you're not saying. I think that's huge too. I'm in a little bit of a different role since I'm a social worker, but I never want to push them to talk about things they're not ready to talk about. But again, too, just like the not judging, it's a judge-free zone. Say what you want to say it how you're going to say it. And I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to hear what you're saying. And sometimes just being there to just listen, not necessarily to have a bunch of advice to be given after they've shared. Sometimes they just really need someone to listen, and that's it. Listen and care.
Thank you so much. So we're hearing not judging, staying focused on any issue at hand so that folks can move forward, really building and building that trust, and reassuring that you are there for them, keeping promises, acknowledging when you mess up, and really listening not only to what people are saying, but also what they're not saying. So I hope that's a good summary. So thank you so much. Let's move to the next question. And this is the third recommendation, and the infographic speaks to evaluating punitive disciplinary measures. And Alec, you had talked a little bit about this. How can schools better address disciplinary issues? And how about we start with Alex for this one?
I think they can better address their disciplinary issues, by taking a step back and really looking at their approach and what it can cause. Because even if these students are messing up, some of their approaches don't make the problems any better. They just make the problems bigger. So then they can just throw the students out later. And in my personal experience, I didn't start off as like a troubled kid in middle school, and they would kind of just, the way that they punish people, it's more of an embarrassment thing, and it's more of like an attacking you thing than more of like a let's resolve this issue. They just want to like put you down and get rid of you. So I feel like they need to just look into what's gonna like break down the problem that you got with the student, and find a solution that is actually going to work for both sides and not just one side.
Thank you so much, Alex. And Alec.
I feel like with disciplinary issues, it's something that I feel like when you have a disciplinary action to go after and really reprimand, I feel like everyone has their different approach. And like how Alex said, his issue in his environment by him where in middle school was that they basically singled him out and would target him and try to embarrass to prove a point. This is embarrassing what you're doing, you should stop it because you feel embarrassed. Whereas somewhere here, we try to do more of an understanding. They try to take you out of class, they try to give you more of a time to reflect and time to just sit there and think about your actions, and less of let's keep the day moving. If they stop, if need be, and say, hey, there's a couple people available, would it make any difference for you to talk to them? Would you, would it help? And you can choose. Whereas like somewhere like, you know, Alex's school, they don't give you that choice. Like it's
Mhm.
very much set path that they've already like constructed for you, and they just tell you to walk. When in all reality, you can lead the horse to the water, but you never can make him drink. That's the choice that the horse always has to make. And that's a choice that we have to make as the proverbial horses. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like you can choose, like you always have choices. And that's the biggest thing that I feel like with disciplinary issues, that's not looked at is the choices that you have, because you always have one.
Great, thank you. So I hear both of you talking about the importance of really understanding what is really happening in a way that you can give time to think or move on, and allow others to move on, and then also not attacking or embarrassing in that process. And the big piece that I heard from you, Alec, is the choices, the importance of thinking through, providing choices. So in combination of that good relationship that we were talking about before, the good communication, that can really address discipline differently. So how about from our other experts? And let's start with Sophia this time.
All right, thank you. Also, just want to acknowledge like hearing the impact, right, of for students around discipline. And so it makes me think about, you know, as if students are going back into school and they've had, or they're a traditional school or their home school, and they've had these supports at West 40, you know, what was not in place at the traditional school, right? In order for you to feel all of the things that you've mentioned around getting what you get from significant adults. So, you know, I'm a systems person. And so I'm thinking, you know, where does the disciplinary work, you know, intersect with social emotional learning, PBIS, all the things that those acronyms that educators are aware of. But for students in particular, kind of where do we offer opportunity for them to tell us about how they experience these policies, right? Before they are pushed out. Issues of dress code or bullying or school events, school conduct, all of those pieces, you know, where can we provide an opportunity for us to listen to students more closely and more intentionally around how they're experiencing these types of policies? Where can we work with families, right, to also engage them in this understanding of what does discipline look like? What are the consequences? What can be in place where families and communities can also be involved, so that we are working on fostering supportive and safe learning environments. So those are the things I'm thinking about, kind of that the prevention work, right, that happens a lot in like these public health environments. Where can we do that in school environments as well?
Thank you so much, Sophia. And how about Lindsay?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Sophia, about being proactive. I think historically we have this system where we've just been so reactionary, which leads to punitive policies, which detract from learning, which prevent learning, and which makes kids feel like Alex said, that they just want to get rid of you. And I actually teared up when he said that. I think that, again, we have to re-envision and reimagine what this proactive work looks like. And I think it's rooted in restorative practices. I think it's rooted in, I think every educator should know about de-escalation, because an escalated adult cannot help an escalated child de-escalate. And I think we see a lot of that because of these reactionary approaches where we're not all skilled in restorative practices. And you know, Sophia talked about families. I think families are equal stakeholders in every child's education. And as we're cultivating these educational communities, everyone should feel a part of that. And in that, no one wants to cause harm. You know, people don't disrupt learning or cause harm in environments where they feel included, where they feel seen and valued and heard for who they are. So That requires creating affirming spaces for students and their families, all of them, and for making them feel a part of the learning that occurs in our educational communities. When we tap into that, and when we are skilled in de-escalation and in restorative practices and in creating environments where no one wants to cause harm, I think that's how we prevent these issues and combat some of these horrible policies that historically have led the discipline in our schools, unfortunately.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And I have a follow-up question for Alex and Alec, if that's okay. And I know that you have shifted from different schools, right? So you went from, at least Alex, it sounds like you went from a school where there was a lot of punitive discipline to your current school where it is more supportive. When you saw that supportive discipline for the first time, what did it look like and how did it feel?
When I came to West 40 for the first time, I already was just trying to come in with like a more open mind on everything, just because of how negative I know I can be, especially like with everything that already happened at my previous school. I was just trying to not hold on to that same energy coming to West 40. So I was just trying to take it as a fresh start. And when I came in, it felt like instantly, like how I said about earlier with the adults, like significant adult, it just felt like that energy, like around the whole school, kind of like it felt like everything about the support system in the school and like just the energy that all the teachers had towards me and all the social workers, just the more welcoming feeling that they provided. It made me feel more motivated, and it kind of made me like turn myself around, because the path that I feel like my old middle school was kind of forming me down was kind of the path that they want to make to hold people back in life. And I feel like I kind of got myself off that track, and I feel like my life changed for the better, like because of West 40. And it's way past education too. It's just in general with like habits in life and like the way I just approach life now versus the way I would have if I kept down that path, going down the same school and everything. It changed me a lot for the better.
Thank you so much, Alex. You demonstrate such a wonderful example of how that positive environment really and how discipline might be handled differently has a huge impact on somebody's life. So thank you. Alec, how about for you?
I feel like it really is a good example to say, like, when I was in 8th grade, I had a choice of either coming to West 40 for 7th grade for my 8th grade year. And they essentially had said, you've missed so many days that like we just can't let you continue on to the next year and to 8th grade because you basically have failed 7th. So they gave me an option. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks before the end of school, of either redoing my 7th grade year at my home school and then just taking the next year to do 8th grade, or I could have went ahead and gone to West 40, which I did, and finish my year there and then just transition into high school. And so I just felt like when they gave me that option, at that time I had like heard about maybe one kid from my school going there, and he had been referred here because of a substance issue. And so I couldn't fathom the fact that they were like essentially just kind of unloading me here to basically say, oh yeah, just like make up what you have to. We're not suited to help you whatsoever. Like just make up your year and, thank you for being an elementary schooler from, 3rd to 7th grade. It's about it. I definitely came here and I kind of was hesitant because I didn't know like what they essentially did to, reprimand you in classes and like to help you learn lessons and stuff like that. So I thought it was going to be even more strict, like teachers would just breathe down your throat and like, it just would be so much harder to really overcome my,
Mhm.
lack of education that I had missed, because I'd be pulled from class so often.
And then it was different, right? When you came to West 40. So how did you feel? Were you surprised? Because you were hesitant when you came in.
Yeah, I was hesitant, and so I kind of was quieter those few days, and I kind of just tried to, understand who was teaching me and kind of how they acted. And so I kind of was letting like some of the other students kind of be more comfortable and like do, whatever they felt comfortable to do. And I saw how they got reprimanded. And so I then in turn was like, okay, I can be more of a truer self, because at that point in my life, I was somebody who kind of like just put on a front for whatever, somebody
Mhm.
wanted to see. And then I would go back to be my true self, because I just felt like I had very little friends and all that stuff. So once I felt like I could really be myself and like, understand from a teacher and how they're going to be themselves and how they would discipline me, I felt much more comfortable, because they would talk to me. They wouldn't just shut me out and like, just, treat me as part of their class. They'd try to get to understand the issue and like move past it, because they understood the next day they'd have to see me in class. Like even maybe later that same day, they'd have to walk past me in the hall, and like, they just knew that if they kept tension there, it wasn't going to resolve anything.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful examples, Alex and Alec. Thank you so much for sharing just a little bit more about discipline and just about your experience of coming to West 40 and how the environment was so different from your home schools. Let's go to our next question. And this question is related to the final recommendation that Erin had shared. And the question is, how can adults and students create a positive learning environment? And Alex and Alec, it was a perfect segue to this question, really. So Alec, if you wouldn't mind starting, just sharing a little bit more about what, like when you came in, and you've touched on some of this so far, but any other thoughts you have about how West 40 and how other schools can create a positive learning environment for students?
I would have to say like a more like positive learning environment definitely could stem from more respect between staff and like students.
Mhm.
I feel like just a great example of that is like the difference between like my 4th period math class and my 7th period math class. Because in my 4th period, we have a little bit of a younger, class. I just have class with younger kids. So like I have like freshmen and like sophomore, and I'm almost about to be a senior next year. So, some of that is understanding like when somebody's acting out and being disrespectful to the teacher, students, if the teacher can't control, maybe 1 or 2 of the kids that are getting out of hand, the more positive approach for everyone to kind of take is let's be respectful to the teacher that's trying to, like do her job, on top of like, we have 40 minutes, if that, to, just have to recollect information and like, do that. So just like understand that it's a minimal time. It's a practice of patience and respect. And I feel like that definitely could sum up a more positive environment for adults and students.
Thank you so much, Alec.
You're welcome.
And Alicia.
I think not having systematic expectations. And what I mean by that is like when you go to school, people expect you go to class, you listen to the teacher, you learn, and you just copy what you hear. And like not a lot of people raise their hands, ask their questions, because some people feel like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Like you'll be singled out, you'll prolong the class, yada, yada, yada. There's like a list of like excuses. But like in my personal experience, I remember I was put in an honors class. And like there would always be someone asking questions, raising their hand or whatever. But because we were put in an honors class, there was the expectation of, oh, you should know this. Oh, you should be able to like just adjust to the system of just coming every day, listening, writing down, and leave. But sometimes it just doesn't work like that for everyone. People are actually curious. Some people actually want to learn, and people are there to interact with this teacher and actually get what they want out of the material. So I feel like having that expectation of, oh, you have to do this, oh, it's this way, and just like, I guess bringing the negatives of like actually wanting to learn, just like actually embracing the fact that people actually want to be there and like learn about the stuff that is actually being taught. So.
Great, thank you so much. So from Alec, we're hearing this patience and respect, and from both students and like each class has a different dynamic. And I'm hearing from Alicia really providing that opportunity to embrace learning and giving opportunities for not to be cookie cutters, right? And how classes are structured, and allowing kids to be curious, right? Excellent. So Lindsay, would you mind sharing from your perspective as a
Sure. Well,
teacher?
Alec talked about knowing and understanding your teachers. And I think from an educator perspective, it speaks to what we already know, which is that relationships are at the foundation of everything that we do in our classrooms. We can talk content and standards and methodology and pedagogy all day long. But if we are not forming meaningful relationships with kids and their families, we're not, it makes success really difficult. And
Mhm.
one of my favorite educational researchers, her name's Dr. Karen Mapp out of Harvard. I took a class with her, and she said in the class, it stuck with me forever. If you don't believe in every single student who walks into your classroom, you're not going to make it in this profession.
Mhm.
And this is, a Harvard professor stating something really profound, but like not rooted in this research that she's so known for. And she was
Mhm.
serious. She said that is the key. And so, I noticed too a question in the question and answer about boundaries. Let's be clear. I am not your friend. I am your teacher, but that I can still maintain boundaries and care about you as a human fiercely and unapologetically. And I can care fiercely and unapologetically about your education and make you believe that you deserve the education that everyone deserves. And so, that was always kind of something that stuck with me, is that I will believe in every student who walks into my classroom. And when a student feels as though you believe in them, sometimes they see themselves as being capable of more than they ever thought possible, which contributes to a really beautiful, positive learning environment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, that believing in every student walking in the door. So thank you. Nancy.
Hello. I think for this one, again, probably coming from a different perspective because I'm a social worker, not a teacher. But it's kind of already been said too, is just understanding that we both have to earn each other's respect. I have to earn the students' respect. They in turn have to earn mine, but believing in them, which was already said way more beautifully than I could have said it. I have to steal that quote from your professor, but just believing in them when they walk in the door, letting them know that you're here for them, you believe in them, they can do it, pushing them, but also knowing when, maybe today is not a day where they need to be pushed. Maybe today is a day that they just need us to kind of let them be, give them the space to process, give them the space to whatever it is that they need to do. So reading them and understanding them and knowing where they're at, and meeting them there, rather than trying to get them to meet you where you're at. Worrying more, being more concerned about them and their welfare than anything else.
Great, thank you. And I totally agree, Lindsay. What we're hearing across all of the responses is how core relationships are, to really understand each other, to be able to know when you can push, when not to push, when to engage with on whatever. Let me go back, and then to your point, the other really important point is just believing in your students. So you have to know each other. The students need to understand the teachers need to understand the students, and really be able to believe in each other, earn that trust. So. All right, so reflecting on what we have discussed, let's wrap up our discussion with one last question. And this question is aimed at the heart of what this is all about. This is about supporting students in transitioning back to traditional school settings. And so taking a step back, I mean, we've talked about a bunch of things, but really love for you to reflect on what, taking that step back and thinking about what would really be helpful in that transition. Because we know that some of the homeschools that some kids are coming from, they go into a school like West 40, have a positive experience. Has that homeschool changed? And what do you do? So let's start with Alex, if you wouldn't mind.
I think that a little bit of everything that we talked about today goes into what these students need to feel welcome. I feel like schools need to go over some things on their own, like their disciplinary, and they need to look over what they can do to try to make the environment feel like more of a home and more welcoming than just like the way that some people's homeschools can feel to them now, that causes them to shy away from there or not show up as much and get sent to alternative schools in the first place. And I feel like the students, they are going to learn skills that they need to be able to cope with being in those environments better at alternative schools like West 40, but it's not just on one or the other. And I feel like that's what can cause failure in a lot of these situations. Like the schools, they never really change, but the students do. And it can't be just one or the other that needs to change. It needs to be both that needs to change for students to be able to come back to their home schools and for them to be able to succeed.
Great, thank you so much, Alex. And Alicia.
Sorry,
No worries.
I think for the school, I think they need to, something I learned here. It's called assuming positive intent. It's
Mhm.
because when you send away a kid and it's pretty much because the school thinks they're a bad kid, I don't think they should assume when they come back, they're still a bad kid because they left. I feel like once they come back, they should feel like, oh, they were there, they learned something, that they're a new person, that they should be able to come in and not be like, oh, you're a bad kid, so we have to keep an eye out on you and stuff like that. They should assume like, oh, like you've evolved, you've changed. I feel like you're a good person and I want to be able to treat you like everyone else and not just single you out.
Great, thank you so much, Alex and Alicia. Just really powerful for me. The really, you've been working on getting skills to cope, whether, Alicia, you're sharing the assuming positive intent as an example, but at the same time, both need to change. We're hearing like, as you have grown, the homeschool needs to grow as well and see and treat you as the wonderful person that you are. So how about we hear from Sophia?
I'm sitting over here like, hallelujah, yes, to like all the things that the students said. I mean, the expectation on students to be transformed by such a wonderful space as West 40, and also the same expectation for the schools, right, to transform. And so what does that mean? And just thinking about, if you're in an area where you have where you're fortunate enough to have something like West 40 in your community, is, are you partnering with these organizations and learning and mirroring the kinds of supports that are provided to students? What can you build in your own district to do the same? If there are regular check-ins for the students that's coming back, that be the responsibility of all educators in the school, and not just one or two. That if we're going to take care of all students, then we mean we're taking care of all students. Also thinking about what the support for the family is going to look like, if that's necessary, right? And how do we engage the family as the student returns, because it's not just the student coming back, right? Thinking about school values and practices that lets students know it's okay to make mistakes, right? And that's part of that how do we communicate about discipline, right? And consequences, but that it's also okay to, we're learning, right? And no one's expendable. And I think too, just, we talked about communication between adult and or student and teacher, or student and educator, but what's the kind of a communication that's happening across the school community with educators, so that we're all kind of building a supportive community for this student to come back to. And then, of course, I have to talk about systems. So these are some of the recommendations that are in the infographic that have been shared with everybody, but providing that professional development for educators about effective classroom behavior management practices, but also the culturally responsive instructional practices and the trauma-informed practices, right? On how we better create those positive conditions for learning. And so you can read more about that in the infographic. But then I would just end with just thinking about what I also heard around relationship-centered schools. And there are some really wonderful, statewide youth-powered organizations across the country that are working to help schools and school districts really prioritize the value of student voice, getting data from student responses on school climate surveys. How are they experiencing the classroom and the larger school community? Also thinking about, how do we invest in staff? So, I'll be the one to the first one to say, we need supports for staff as well, retention, self-care, like, again, I think, Lindsay, you mentioned, an adult who is kind of, in a situation where they're not ready to respond in the healthiest of ways. But how do we also take care of our staff as well and foster those opportunities for students to get to know one another, for adults to get to know one another, and for adults to get to know students. And I would just leave you with one consideration as a practice. On those orientation days, maybe the focus is about relationships, right? Instead of rules. And what kind of intentions do we want to set for the rest of the year that's really about who we want to be with one another, how we want to be in relationship with each other, and not all of the, again, all those rules and things like that. So
The don't.
yeah, that, and instead of the do, let's do this together, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sophia. And Nancy, we would love to hear what you have to say, especially since you have such incredible students there with you.
I do indeed, very proud of them. I'm going to keep mine really short just so there's, time for the questions. But I think biggest thing, I'm a huge proponent for the check in, check out. Just check in with them, check out with them, see where they're at every day. How is their day when, what was their morning like? Did they start out a good morning? Did they fight with their mom? Did they fight with their dad? Just putting in those couple extra minutes every class period can make a huge difference. And then I know it was already said, communicating with the family, maybe when they first transition back, that's every week you guys are checking in, well, this is what, Alicia is coming home saying, is that kind of what you're seeing? Just comparing notes, making sure that what the school thinks they're seeing or is seeing is really how the student is feeling too. Just everybody staying on top of each other until, they're feeling good.
Excellent. So I'm hearing a lot of positive communication, positive and proactive is what I'm hearing from Sophia and Nancy in particular, especially with this focus on families. And then I think the other huge thing that I heard from Sophia is that relationship between schools and making sure that folks know how the kids are doing, and then also talking about how to be successful when they're coming back. Excellent. So thank you so much for having this discussion through these 5 prompts. We have gotten a bunch of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk through a couple of them in our remaining time. And So one question we heard about is how does having one safe adult per student look in a larger district? And I'm wondering if this might be something that Lindsay, Sophia, and Nancy might be able to speak to.
Sure. So I actually worked with a school a few weeks ago where they were being as proactive as at the start of each school year. They had different departments and different teachers who were on this task force where they assigned a student to every single teacher in the building. And these, again, were teachers who were skilled in restorative practices. And but every student in the every teacher in the building had that was a part of the team had a caseload of sorts where it was their job to just check in, make sure they were, doing okay, that they not that we all shouldn't be making that effort and connecting with families, but there was a designated adult for every student and every family. And also that really, families often get overwhelmed when there are large schools with who do I go to with this, right? And so providing that one person as a go-to point of contact for families can also be really helpful in cultivating those relationships. And then when you need to bring other people in, that educator can help do so. But so that's just one recent example I can give.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Nancy and Sophia, is there anything you'd like to add? Large districts and how do you manage that?
Well, I think that Lindsay said it beautifully, like assigning one adult to one student. Simple.
I would just add, echo all of that, but also just ask students. Ask students. I don't think we take enough time to listen to students, and it's not going to happen overnight. But they also have solutions. And oftentimes, I hear, administrators, as a former administrator, we've got, great counselors, or and that isn't always what students will tell us, right? Well, actually, my safe adult is the janitor because he takes time to ask me how I'm doing every single day, or, the person who serves me food in the cafeteria. So take inventory of the students who are telling you who their champion is, and what is that champion doing for them, and how do we foster that across our school community and our district.
Thank you so much, Lindsay and Sophia. I mean, having that designated adult and being open about who that person is, because it's listening to students and hearing what they are needing to be able to connect with an adult. Thank you. We also got a question about how sometimes schools will have reputations, alternative schools will have reputations of being for the bad kids. And sometimes this can, the person asks, how does that reputation limit the acceptance of these restorative, authentic, individualized approaches in quote unquote traditional schools?
Well, I'll jump in. So as someone who's taught in both settings, again, like I talked about the dangers of making assumptions about kids and their families, and that's a very real thing, and I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part of that question, Greta?
Yeah, the person says, how does the reputation of limit the acceptance of these restorative, authentic, individualized approaches?
Well, if you have, I mean, let's be real, kids can pick up on when they're in a space where they don't feel safe, and when they're in a room with an adult who's making unfair assumptions or judgments about them. So that in and of itself creates a barrier to any kind of restorative practices that are happening. I also want to say too, though, I've also witnessed on this part of students, and I don't want to speak for students, but just in the students on this call, but in my experience, I've witnessed students who, when they transition back, education should be empowering for everyone. And I won't get on my soapbox, but there are a lot of really oppressive practices that exist within our traditional schools, and alternative schools have been kind of forced to reimagine and rethink some of those oppressive tactics. But You know, when we think about the 5 lenses of oppression, violence, powerlessness, marginalization, exploitation, and then cultural imperialism, there's a lot of that that exists in our schools. And so when they transition back, there's this culture shock for students oftentimes. So that compounded and combined with feeling judged, feeling as though the person who's charged with their care in the classroom, making unfair assumptions about them and their journey, all of that to me is a recipe for disaster. And so I think in the traditional school setting, I think we have a lot of work to do. And back to what Sophia said, you know, listening to students and their experiences. Oftentimes we think we know, but we don't.
Thank you so much. Lindsay, yes, that there definitely seems to be a lot of work to do, and to be able to focus on a lot of what we talked about today of building those relationships, having good communication, positively addressing discipline, and building an overall environment. Nancy, there is a question for you. And can you share experiences working with outside practitioners for students? Needs are greater than what schools can provide, for example, anxiety or depression.
So I wish I had a magic answer for that, but I don't. I have the same struggles that every school social worker has. It's actually, you know, I think because we're such a small, tight-knit community here, we all go home and we all feel the defeat when we make a call and there's no room, no space, no bed, however it is. I don't, just because we're an alternative school, we don't have, our kids don't get in any sooner than any other kid would get in. It's still based on need. It's still based on who makes the call first. But just, you know, I get their emails, I get their phone numbers. I'm not afraid to text them outside of work hours. I'm not afraid to blow them up on email till I get my, you know, till I get some sort of solution. But unfortunately, I'm running into the same problem we all are, that they're just long waiting list. So here we try to tackle the problems as much as we can on our own because of that. So.
Thank you so much for your honest answer. It really is a lot of hard work, and it's a work in progress. So thank you so much for your dedication, Nancy, to your students and trying to get through all those barriers, because there are a lot of barriers. So with that, I just want to say thank you so very much again to our wonderful experts, Alex, Alec, Alicia, Nancy, Sophia, and Lindsay. Just can't share my gratitude enough for your honest thoughts, and I really do think that it was very informative and hopefully motivational for our listeners as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron to wrap us up.
Thank you, Greta, and thank you to all the panelists, students from West 40, Lindsay, Sophia, Alex, Sophia, and Alicia. Thank you so much. You know, the thing I really took away from today is that we were trying to give some practical things that you can do as you walk away. Can you take what we shared today and in your school or in your district, put it to work later today or tomorrow? And another thing that I really liked about what was shared is that, you know, and so often we're looking for things that, you know, we have to pay for, cost this and cost that. So much of what was shared today was free. It's about relationships and building relationships between people, students and teachers. And, you know, I love that, be able to share those things. And so, hey, if you like what you heard today, which hopefully you did, and you want to hear more, like you said, we had a lot of questions, and we are going to make sure that we compile all those and provide some follow-up answers to those, additional perspective from all the panelists. So be on the lookout from that. That'll be coming in the next few weeks as we're able to work on those. And also, we encourage you to stay connected with us. You can visit our Region 9 Center page. You can follow us on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn, and sign up for our newsletter. You know, all these things. We have so many things that we share on a monthly basis. So we really encourage you to go check that out and sign it up. And also our partners at Nestle, make sure you visit their website, follow them as well, and sign up for all the things they have. And so just want to thank everyone for joining us today, staying over a little bit extra, and wish you all a great day, and you'll hear from us soon. So have a great rest of your day.